this week's episode of the Buckeye Blitz podcast. It is week number 2, and the Buckeyes are 1-0.
What's the best thing about being 1-0?
Chance to go 2-0. Is that right?
Yeah.
I feel like it's something like that.
It is. It's the Urban Meyer line that he tweets out every week after every win. It's just, I love that's my favorite part. Is just that even though he's retired, technically you can say he's a Florida, OSU, Utah, all those schools fan, but he still picks OSU as his main team. I love that. He's definitely a homer. And
he was on Big Noon. He was on the Big Noon cast. Obviously, he always is, but they were at the shoe this week, and it was really cool. Kind of see him as like one full season out of being the Ohio State head coach, and it was really cool. And he was talking about Garrett Wilson, and he's like, everything coming out of this program, talking about this kid. He's like, well, I recruited him, but everybody in the building saying how talented he is. And he's like, just from what I can tell you, when we were visiting him in high school, we were super excited about him. You know, I thought that was pretty funny.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, it's actually pretty awesome still because it's almost been like super helpful for him because Fox does so much with Ohio State. Like I feel like they cover like Joel Klatt and Gus Johnson's do like almost every game, and then they got the Big Noon kickoff at every game too. Unfortunately, they won't be at this week's just because it's an ABC game this week. But it's just Urban Meyer still has so many hands on this team with like almost all of the players on this team have been recruited by him except for basically Justin Fields. But even him, he still was recruited in a way by Urban Meyer because he talks about how Ryan Day went to him for help on that a lot and kind of allowed him to be part of the conversation. So it's been awesome having him a part of it, especially since not everyone's the biggest OSU fans because it's just too mainstream to be like that. But I definitely do love having Urban Meyer there. It's good just because he's so supportive of Ryan Day too. I think it's pretty awesome, and I'm just tired of all the rumors where he's going to go next year. Where I think he's happy where he's at.
I think so too. It seems like he's really gotten comfortable in that role. You know, he's kind of accepted it. But even though Urban Meyer won't be there, we do have. I think Herbie calls the ABC games, doesn't he?
Yeah, he will be.
Right, Chris Fowler and Kirk Herbstreit. So. You can't get too far from a Buckeye homer. Actually, in Herbie's case, the anti-homer dude tries so hard to not be an Ohio State fan. It's even more
really
annoying than being an Ohio State fan.
It's like it's upsetting listening to him sometimes because you expect him to be the homer that like Urban Meyer is, for example.
Right.
And he just like will talk about every other team more than OSU just so that way he doesn't get his credit taken away from him. But most of the time, OSU fans are the ones watching you. So
right. I know.
Like people were coming for his job after the OSU Clemson game.
Anyways. Yeah, before we go down that rabbit hole,
we've gotten into the tangent that we do so well. Now let's get back into what happened. Let's dive into the Nebraska game. What was your setup for the game? How did it go for you?
It was great. I actually went home. I didn't watch it in Columbus, which was slightly disappointing because obviously the game was in Columbus, but. That was okay. I got to watch it with my mom at my mom's house, and it was pretty great being back, you know, into college football and stuff. And it was really the first time I like sat down and deliberately watched college football. You know, every other game I've watched this year has kind of been like, let me flip through the channels and see what's on and catch the endings of games and stuff. But this was probably the first time. Sat down, deliberately watched the game from start to finish. I mean, I can't complain. It was a pretty great setup. What about yourself?
Yeah, this year's been kind of different for me just because normally Saturdays obviously are taken up by OSU games. Even after the games, you're either exhausted or you're getting ready to go out and do something that night. Where now my Saturdays are pretty much free, just hanging out at home or working. So I've actually been able to watch a lot more other college football games, which has been actually pretty nice, just getting more of a feel of the rest of the league. But this week it was obviously much, much different. I woke up super excited, yelling "Go Bucks" right when I woke up, pretty much. And it was kind of nice just because every game I try to wear the same thing. I wear the same OSU socks in my jersey every time. Everything else is different, but I have to have those two things on. So it's kind of fun to gear up for the game in a way. You know, I put those on. I put my an OSU windbreaker, and I went to work. And it didn't feel as like depressing to be at work as it normally would have been. You know, knowing that I had OSU football game to watch, it honestly allowed my workday to breeze by. It was super nice to sat at my desk, silence, cheering and clapping, even at my cubicle, even though no one else was there. I was by myself, just clapping away at the game, and it was pretty awesome. Like those games when you're just like alone can kind of be nice sometimes.
Oh, for sure. And it would have been more depressing than on a regular day if the game was actually, you know, fans were allowed to be in attendance. So that's a good way to make work not as bad.
True. Yeah. Did you like watching it with the like empty stadium, or like what were your thoughts on not being at the game, for example, as both of us have been there for the past 3 to 4 years, almost at every single home game almost?
Yeah. So before we even get to the game part, I don't know if you watched like the special YouTube broadcast that the band had put on YouTube. Did you end up checking that out?
I didn't. I meant to. Like at 11 o'clock, was it that they put it on there?
It was 11:30. Yeah.
And I kind of forgot about it. And then halftime came, and then they're like, "Oh, we're gonna put it on," but then I never saw it, so then I just kind of forgot about it. I'll have to go back and watch that though, because I did really want to see it.
Yeah. Actually, I think the only reason I knew about it is I think you said something about it on Twitter. So, did you? Okay.
I think I talked about it on the podcast, just saying how it was so like interesting how they were doing it with their masks on still.
Yeah. So I actually looked into that, and I was wondering the same thing, how they were doing with their masks on. But I guess what they did is put like I don't know the name of it, and I'm sorry, but pretty much instrument masks, you know, at the end of it, so they were you know, filter that air going through the instrument. But yeah, it was pretty interesting. But the only reason I bring that up is because that's one thing that was definitely missing from the game is the band, and you can when watching a normal game, and especially being at a normal game, but watching a normal game on TV, you can hear the band and hear the fight songs and stuff, and that's definitely something that was missing. Besides that, though, I didn't really. It's just like every other sport. I feel like once you get into it, it really kind of just feels normal after a while, you know?
Yeah, I agree. Like they just avoided showing the stands, you know, so like it didn't feel like that was missing necessarily. You know, when you watch a football game, you only see the field. You're not seeing the stands the entire time. So it didn't feel much different. I think the biggest thing was just not feeling like of being there. Like it's the first time I've watched a game at the shoe, not while being at the shoe in almost 3 to 4 years now. So like that was probably the weirdest part, but I thought that they did pretty well with the fake noise that they put on whenever there was a big play or something. You know, I think it'll be a bigger deal when we have like the Michigan game and it's just a normal sound every time after big plays. But you know how if there's something crazy that happens, you hear that roar that you wouldn't normally hear just from them putting that filtered sound in. And like even the small plays, like that they might not be putting that sound on after, but it's a big deal to OSU fans. Like maybe they kept the call the same, you know, where you barely hear what the ref is saying after he says that the call stands. That's all you hear. You don't want to hear anything else. You just hear everyone going crazy. You probably aren't going to have those situations. I think that we'll notice the difference later on, but in a smaller game like Nebraska, probably it felt pretty much the same. Yeah,
I agree. And looking forward to this week, not trying to get too ahead of ourselves, but I think it's definitely something that could help us out. A night game at Penn State, definitely during a whiteout is definitely one of the most challenging atmospheres, I think, in college football. I think Urban Meyer came on and said that's worth 7 to 10 points, a whiteout. So that not, them not having fans this week, I think in that situation will actually be advantageous to us. So,
no, 100%. I think that's really going to make a difference, just because that's such a big deal for them, and that you can be a primary resource on this. You've been to the game during a whiteout, and you said it's louder than the shoe even is.
Crazy, loudest stadium ever.
Yeah, so taking that away is going to be a big difference, and probably will help us out a lot. Just a little getting into that game already here. We'll be talking about that game pretty much the entire podcast, even no matter what we're talking about. So it's a big deal. So
yeah, we'll definitely get back into that. But I guess talking more about the game, I know that we both had said that one of the positions to look out for was the running back position. Definitely didn't go as well as I hoped. The running back,
it was very underwhelming
by committee thing. Yeah. And I think partially of that is because of the committee. I think you see that all the time in the NFL too. It's kind of hard for one guy to get going when you're swapping back and forth. And I guess I'll just talk about it for a second. It didn't really seem like any guy could really get anything going. I was thoroughly unimpressed with Master Teague. He seemed very one-dimensional to me, kind of slow, and maybe you feel differently, but I was very unimpressed with him. I think it's going to take me a little bit to get used to, J.K. Dobbins not being there because he's so dynamic in so many ways. But and then Trey Sermon's again didn't really look great, but you got to remember it's the guy's first game of the year.
I really had high expectations for them. I think I got a little too excited. Even listening to the Big Noon kickoff, going back to Urban Meyer, one of the biggest notes he had was saying that he didn't expect Justin Fields to run the ball much at all. Like, they wanted him to be solely just kept in the pocket, not risk anything. And then he ended up being the leading rusher for our team.
Right.
That probably was not part of the game plan, was not ideal. But we couldn't get the running game going, and that was all we had was Justin Fields, and he became pretty much the sole offense that we had. Because even in the passing game, it was all because of him. So, but I mean, honestly, I agree. Teague was not great. I thought Trey Sermon looked a little bit better, but even he didn't look great. He didn't look as quick as I was expecting. Steel Chambers, even in the 7 snaps that he had, he ended up being probably the best, the most productive running back that we had. He had that whole series, and he played pretty well. I mean, Teague vultured those 2 touchdowns, but wasn't really because he was playing great necessarily. But I think that when I step back a little bit, I took some time to think about it more post the game. I think that the biggest thing is, you have to think about the fact that Master Teague's still coming off an injury. We didn't even expect him to be ready to play by now. So I think that might be, I'm hoping at least that's one of the reasons that he was not playing as well. And then Trey Sermon, this is his first game, live action. He didn't even get a spring game. He didn't get anything. This is all he has. So he's still getting used to the offense, and I'm hoping that that's the biggest deal. And my kind of hope is that later on in the season, once they get a better feel for what their running situation is, that it becomes more of a actual committee where you kind of alternate running backs rather than you get a series, now you get a series, then we'll switch back and forth. I feel like that doesn't always work out as well sometimes. I think if you do it where you have Teague doing the first down, the downfield back or the short yardage plays, and then you have Sermon coming out of the backfield more as a passing back, I think that could be a lot more useful, kind of similar to how we had J.K. Dobbins and Mike Weber almost. But I definitely think we were spoiled by J.K. Dobbins. That's one of the best running backs we've ever had. And I think it's just going to take some time to getting used to not having him for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point you made. I do think more situational back is going to be more strategic than kind of just giving guys series, because you never know. It's just, I agree. I don't think that works. But Trey Sermon, 4.4 yards per carry. Master Teague, 3.4 yards per carry. Steel Chambers, 8 yards a carry. So I did think Steel Chambers looked good. He looked kind of like a mix in between. He big, and he looked pretty fast. But we'll see.
He did look really agile. I did not expect him to do that quickly. No. I think the running game just overall was the biggest takeaway from that game.
Yeah, 4.5 yards a carry for our running attack as a whole, which is great. I mean, I'll take 4.5 yards a carry any day. But I think it's just something we're not used to. But one thing really quick, Master Teague and Trey Sermon, pretty much even split. I don't know if you said that or not, but 30 carries for Teague, 28 for Sermon.
No, yeah, exactly. Yeah, they split it pretty well. So I think that looking at the film, they'll be able to see a good amount there.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, this is the first real action that they've had this year, so it's kind of hard to jump to conclusions just yet.
Yeah, but like I said, I think that was the biggest takeaway. Obviously, there was a lot of takeaways from this game, so we got that one was the biggest thing, and now we'll kind of just do like quick hit through the rest of the game. We have a lot of quick hitters, but we want to try and get as much into it just because as it being the debut, there's a lot to talk about. So, what did you think of Fields' debut? Is his Heisman candidacy back on?
Oh yeah, I think he narrowed the gap too.
100%.
He had almost as good of a game that you could ask for. He looked good. He looked sharp. He was throwing the ball incredibly well. Taking a little bit too much hits for my liking, but that's fine.
I agree.
First game action, but
yeah, I have a little bit of worries about the offensive line and the pressure that they gave up, especially against Nebraska, who didn't really have that well of a rushing attack, like a pass rushing attack. So I do get worried about that, but Harry Miller, new guy in our line, Wyatt Davis, you could say that he kind of took some time off getting ready for the combine and whatnot. Maybe that is a little bit just getting back to things. And then Josh Myers just wasn't a good performance. You know, I don't have any reason for him. Just wasn't a good performance. But I think I was a little worrisome about that. But hopefully they'll figure it out and they'll be okay. Otherwise, I thought the tackles did pretty well, though. So that was good, though. Yeah,
and we're going to keep on saying this, but it's a tune-up game. I mean, this is the first live action that these guys have had all year. So it's really hard to jump to any conclusions.
Exactly.
But Justin Fields, I mean, 20 for 21, almost 300 yards through the air, almost a perfect QBR. So yeah, you can't beat that. I mean, that's exactly what I was expecting out of him, though.
Yeah, he looked. I honestly, as a passer, I thought he looked better than he did last year, and he was amazing last year.
Yep. Yeah, he looked great.
And then, obviously, when you have Fields going off, he just has to be throwing to someone. So I thought that was the biggest thing was how amazing Olave and Garrett Wilson were. They came back from a great year last year, and they showed out.
Yeah, I mean, I know that you're a big Garrett Wilson guy. I truly did not think he'd be as involved as he was. But, I mean, did he make a huge jump? He came in as a freshman last year, and he really surprised us with a few plays. But, I mean, none of it was really consistent. No fault of his own. He just – I mean, I think we lost 4 or 5 receivers through the draft and through, graduation last year. So he just didn't really have a ton of opportunities. But, I mean, he came in this game. You would never know that the dude barely played last year, I mean, 7 receptions, 129 yards, and a touchdown. And I don't even know if he played much of the fourth quarter. So just really, he looked fantastic. And I mean, he's special. He's just going to be special,
Yeah. He really is. It's just crazy that he's only a sophomore. I mean, and he had less snaps than Chris Olave did, and Chris Olave even came out with an injury early in the game. I mean, not early in the game, didn't play the whole game. And yet Garrett Wilson was still more productive than Chris Olave was. And as we know, Chris Olave was Fields' favorite last year. So I think it's a huge deal. I said Garrett Wilson would be my X factor this year, and that's just because I thought he had a lot to take on. Chris Olave was continuing his already dominant role from last year, but Garrett Wilson was kind of filling the shoes of 3 pretty solid receivers that we lost between Austin Mack, KJ Hill, and Benjamin Victor. And those targets had to go to someone, and he stepped up and he was ready for it.
I think our receiver room as a whole, it's crazy what these guys are. I mean, it's crazy how young our receiving room is, I think historically Ohio State has not been viewed as a great receiver school. Yeah. I mean, Michael Thomas is the rare exception. I can't even really think of anybody.
Mahomes,
but I was going to say in the last 10 years.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Michael Thomas, that's really been relevant in the NFL. But I mean, you look at these guys: Garrett Wilson, sophomore; Chris Olave, junior; Julian Fleming, freshman; Jamison Williams, sophomore; Jackson Smith, and Jigba. He is a freshman, correct, or is he a sophomore?
No, he's a freshman too.
He's Fleming, a freshman. That's what I thought.
Jigba and Scott Jr. all freshmen.
Right, and Cameron Babbs is a redshirt sophomore, and he played all last year, so, and probably the year before that too, I think. But it's just crazy how young these guys are, and they're all so good. But the one thing I noticed is that none of them are really that big. Am I wrong? Who's the biggest one? Olave?
He might, maybe Williams. They're all small.
They all seem like super small, don't they? And Jigba, Jackson Smith and Jigba looked like he was like 5'5", and I know he's not, but I was like, dude, he is no taller than like Cole Beasley,
They look like they legit just came out of high school. Like I know they did, but that doesn't always happen because you look at some of the guys that come out of high school and then play college football. Most of the time they're massive.
Right.
Like these guys all look like CeeDee Lamb, that size, Marquise Brown. But hey, they're producing. And they're proving that it didn't matter. So, it's crazy how well they did. Yes, the separation was insane. How they didn't have to do much contact. There wasn't much jamming by the corners. They were able to get a pretty good separation from the corners. But I think that this is a receiver group that can compete with any team. And you look at Clemson, the receivers have been that's their biggest issue right now. They don't have any receivers, and it's been hurting Trevor Lawrence. Honestly, that's the complete opposite case for Justin Fields. And like you said, these are all young guys that we're going to have for a long time still.
So Chris Olave 6'1", Garrett Wilson 6 foot, Jameson Williams 6'1", Julian Fleming 6'2". Jackson Smith and Jigba 6 foot. So they're all either the range is 6'2" to 6 foot.
Yeah. No Mike Williams.
They're all literally the same they're all the same height. Maybe G. Scott Jr. I'm looking this all up as we go. He's 6'3".
That's crazy though.
All right. I was gonna say, don't they all look the same?
They really honestly do. They all look like take the helmet off, they're a lot different, but with the helmet on, they look the exact same person. Especially because Chris Olave, I'm still getting used to Chris Olave as number 2. I like the reason for his number 2, like the CO2 thing. It was pretty cool. He's about to blow up, as he says. But it's still kind of getting used to that just because even though he's only been here for a year and a half before this season, I was already pretty used to him being number 17.
That's weird.
So I think that he blends in with the rest of the guys. He doesn't stand out as much because of that. But just talking about the receivers, Smith and Jigba might have the catch of the year, and this season just started. That was insane.
I thought there was no chance that was a reception off of the first look. I think what also the ref saw was the foot drag, which was obviously out of bounds. But he was floating. He was literally floating in air.
Literally.
And
he's like, hold on, let me get this foot in real quick.
I think everybody on Twitter freaked out. I saw Big Cat tweet about it. I saw LeBron James tweet about it. I saw Pat Mahomes tweet about it. I saw XYZ tweet about it. Every single person that has anything to do with Twitter, I swear, saw that clip, and that was pretty cool. That was an insane catch. I thought, no way. It just makes you feel good. It's like, man, we really are stacked for the future now and for the future.
Like Chris Olave probably leaving after the season as a junior, and yet we might improve because all these guys are just going to get better.
You don't even know what these guys are capable of,
Like, it's just crazy. Like, he had 2 catches. That was his second catch ever in college football. It was that catch. It's going to go down in history as one of the best ever, probably.
Is there any possible way he can go up from here? Jesus Christ.
Literally. It's a lot to live up for. Lots to live up to.
I saw the guys on the team call him Jax, so I think I might refer to him as Jax in the future instead of.
I like that better. His last name's a little tough.
Instead of Smith and Jigba.
I think Gus Johnson should take that note too. He kind of had some trouble saying his name. I feel like
Smith and Jigba.
Yeah, yep. He usually loves 3 name people like Donovan Peoples-Jones, but he's gonna have some work on that one.
Right, he'll figure it out. I feel he's an all timer.
Yeah. But then last note about the receivers, Chris Olave. Unfortunately goes down with a big head injury. As you were saying to me earlier, it looked like his eyes kind of rolled back into his head. Did not look good at all. Looked like a really serious injury. I ended up going to the sideline, got checked out in the tent really quickly, honestly, especially for something like a head injury, and then ended up saying, like, just keeping out for the rest of the game as a precaution, luckily, because they never really said much about him, I feel like, in the game, like what his status was or anything like that. But I don't know. It seemed like he was going to be done at least for another week just because of how bad that injury was. But apparently what Ryan Day's been saying in press conferences lately is that they feel like he could be ready for the game. He's been doing really well, but they don't want to push it. So there's still a chance he doesn't play. But I think it's definitely something to take note of just because we need anything. Even though Penn State did lose, they're not as good as we expected. We need everything we can get still in that game because it's a huge game still.
Yeah. Real quick question. Does it alarm you when guys chew gum during the game? Because it doesn't matter what sport, but when someone is chewing gum in the middle of a game, it always like mentally screws with my head a little bit. And Chris Olave gets up from getting hit and his gum was coming out of his mouth. And I thought it was his tongue. I thought it was like he bit like a little piece of his tongue off, you know, but it was, but he was chewing his gum on the sideline. And I don't understand how these guys chew gum. Can you imagine chewing gum during a football game?
Yeah. I mean, like even when I played baseball, I could not stand playing with that because it was just scared to death of choking on it. And baseball is a lot less contact, a lot less contact than football is. Right. You know, like this is someone that's going to get tackled every play that he gets the ball.
I know. I think I know for sure Andy Dalton chews gum during the game because I saw him when Dak went down with the injury. Andy Dalton was chewing gum, which scares me knowing that he got absolutely lit up this week. And he has no mouth guard in. I think Deshaun Watson chews gum. I know Pat Mahomes chews gum during the game. I don't understand how these guys do it, you know. But anyway,
it's weird.
Sidetracked. But I did notice that he was coming up from getting hit in that, absolutely drilled, you know. And he's coming up chewing gum, and I was like, oh, you know, this guy's tongue's falling out of his mouth.
It almost makes it like it don't. It says something about these players, though, that they can chew gum, get hit like that, and still get back up and to keep chewing their gum. And and normal humans, it's like choke on their gum just by walking sometimes.
Right.
I have not done that, but I know people that do.
Crazy stuff.
We talked about the offense a ton. Any thoughts on the defense?
Initial reaction. Yikes. The way Nebraska came down and scored. Yeah. I understand that Nebraska's had 8 months to plan that drive, but didn't look great, you know, as far I mean, actually at this point, like 11 months, 10 months, but didn't look great. I was very concerned going, starting the start of the game. And obviously we picked it up in the second half and we ended up, or not in the second half, but moving forward. But definitely concerning. I will say the defensive line does not look anywhere near where it's been the last few years. Linebackers, I'm actually excited about the linebacking group. I think that they are much better than they've been in recent years, and I'm not worried about the DB. So for once, I think in the last 5 or 6 years, I think I'm actually worried about Ohio State's defensive line.
No, it's really weird to say just because that's been the thing that we never worry about. But I completely agree. You know, I think that once Haskell Garrett came in, you know, they gave him some time before they wanted to play him. Once he got more playing time in that game, things changed a lot. We also have Vincent out from an injury as our defensive tackle. So I think that like that's still a little bit of hope. And I try to tell myself that defensive wise, we always kind of play slow, especially in these small games. We like even Bowling Green in Miami were beating us at one point in the game before we started blowing them out, So we always are kind of a team that just starts a little slow in those small games, especially when they're the season opener. And I mean, you look at like Alabama and Clemson both have really good offenses, obviously, and even their season openers, they played it really close as well. So I'm trying not to be too worried, but at the same time, this defense is not the same defense that we've had in the past few years where there's a standout guy that's just amazing that you don't have to worry about. Sean Wade's there, but even he's in a new position, so you still have that worry with him. He played well, so I'm not worried about him, obviously. But still, like it's not like, well, we have Chase Young, we'll be fine. He just played a little bad this week. Like there's a lot of unproven players on this defense, so I still get a little worried. But the way they play in the second half makes me feel a little bit better still.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that was a great way to put that, as unproven, just because it doesn't necessarily mean they're not good. It's just we don't know. I have a hard time believing that those guys aren't good. But one thing I did notice is that Jonathan Cooper wearing the number 0. Do you like that or not?
Yeah, I did. I think I like this. I can't describe the story completely, but I think the fact that it has that story to it, it makes it a lot better. And I kind of like that Zach Harrison, I think he took number 9 now, or 6. I couldn't remember. Flip them around. They're the same thing.
Right.
But it kind of took me a second to realize which one was Zach Harrison. I forgot Jonathan Cooper was 0 at first, so I had to remind myself about that too. It's nice having him back, but I do like the fact that he's 0 just because of the story behind it.
Yeah, the story is awesome, but personally, I don't love the look of the 0. I really thought I was going to. I did, but seeing it in live action definitely did not like it as much as I thought I was going to. I think a double 0 would be sick, but the 0, it kind of it looks weird on an Ohio State uniform, but it's like I guess it's something I just have to get used to.
I guess like if we're going to say performance-wise, it wasn't a good look for him because he only had 2 tackles, didn't really get in the backfield at all. So maybe he should switch back just because he did not look very good. But it's his first game in over a year, so
right.
I don't think he really played at all last year, right?
It's almost like it's a huge target on his. Yeah,
yeah. I think that like they definitely put a lot more pressure on him. Yeah. Like even Zach Harrison took a while to get really going in that game. I expected more from him. But that offensive line is pretty good, so I won't be too mad. They returned their entire offensive line from last season. So where we have a really young defensive line, so I'm not like completely shocked necessarily that they were able to run the ball on us, but it was still weird after allowing an average of 100 rushing yards last year to now allow 210 against Nebraska.
Right.
That was definitely a little weird. But the weirdest part was that all of the rushing yards pretty much came from 2 quarterbacks. So I get like
two big plays.
Mills had 25 rushing yards. Tompkins had 22. That was it for their running backs. So, I mean, we face other teams without a rushing quarterback. I'm not too concerned. But when we get to a team like Trevor Lawrence who ran it all over us, I will be a little bit more concerned. But hopefully with our linebackers, they'll try to have someone that just keys in on him and we play better because of that. I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully, at least after how much he ran on us last year, we won't forget that.
Yeah. And I think you said it, but there's not really any Big Ten quarterbacks I could think of that are true running quarterbacks. Actually, Indiana's quarterback, pretty agile, so he might be someone to look out for. But besides that, I'm not too worried about the running quarterback part. And again, for the 500 trillionth time, it's a tune-up game. First time these guys have hit somebody in 10 months, so not too worried.
So my first reaction to that game, because even though I was obviously super excited, I still had a lot of like worries just because that's, as a Cleveland fan, that's how I think a lot of times.
Right.
And I think it's an overreaction, but my first thoughts were just because of how many more games Clemson has played and everything. My first worry was that if we can't establish the run and do better on defense, which was the biggest reason we were able to stay in the game last year, was just because we ran the ball so well against them. I almost feel like if we can't fix those problems, we can't compete at all with Clemson. Tell me I'm right in that I'm overreacting.
You know what? I will agree with you a little bit in saying that we've already been put at a big disadvantage this year. You know, we're going to have to play perfect to get to the national championship and eventually win it. We're going to have to play perfect. You know, I mean the cards are stacked against us as far as scheduling and all that stuff. With that being said, I trust Ryan Day. And sometimes I feel like maybe our running game is not as good, but I feel like our passing game is it's just absolutely taking off, and I feel like it has such a high ceiling that it's probably better than it was last year, which is crazy. But I trust Ryan Day to make those adjustments and stuff, but I guess we'll see. I don't know. I honestly don't know.
I do think that it's the first game. I think that he'll take this note and be like, okay, obviously we need to fix things with the running game. Mm-hmm. And I think it was almost a thing too, where we ran all over them last year and they said, you know what, even though Justin Fields is the best player on the team, we're going to make him win it by passing rather than running the ball. And they did that. And obviously it worked for us because we do have someone like Justin Fields and awesome receivers, but we ran the running ball, and maybe just if we continue doing really well in the passing game, that opens more up for the running game, and that allows us to play better. I don't know. But I think it's really early to tell.
Yeah, if teams are going to sell out on the run, I'll gladly take it, because it seemed like those passing lanes were open all day, and it's evident when the guy goes 20 for 21.
Yeah. All right, last two things. I'm just going to go real quick, 30 seconds. Shout out Haskell Garrett, came in, played really well, had a sack after getting shot in the face 2 months ago, right?
Yep. He's missing 5 teeth in his mouth. Still on a liquid diet, and somehow keeping up his defensive tackle weight. So definitely got to give him a shout out there.
Yeah, it was awesome. He ended up probably being the leader of our defense.
Yeah, I'm glad to see him actually starting to play. It's been kind of waiting for him to break out here.
Yeah. And then interesting to see Jack Miller be the person that came in reserve for Justin Fields rather than CJ Stroud. They kind of kept that quiet of who was the leader in camp, just as both being top freshman recruits. I think that could have just been that they picked him for that game, and next game that we put someone in, CJ Stroud gets the playing time. We'll see. But it was really interesting to see Jack Miller be the guy, and he ran the ball really well, just never got to pass the ball. So still doesn't really say anything. And then last thing, any thoughts on Ryan Day's apology after the game for scoring that touchdown rather than kneeling it down?
First, I will say that Ryan Day kept Justin Fields in way too long. I understand why he did tune-up game for the 600,000th time, but definitely kept him in a little bit too long, and he actually took a sack at the end of the game, which is definitely something we didn't want to see. Honestly, I didn't even see Ryan Day's apology. I read something about it, but I didn't see it for myself. But he apologized for scoring at the end of the game there.
Yeah, he apologized to Nebraska, saying that they should have knelt the ball once they got the first down and just ran the clock out rather than scoring with Jack Miller running in the touchdown. But Scott Frost from Nebraska already responded to it, saying that he's like, hey, like, this is football. We should have stopped you if we didn't want that to happen.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, I actually really like Scott Frost. He's a gamer, man. He doesn't apologize to anybody, and kind of look ahead to next week. They're not playing this week, but we could talk about it obviously. But I know that Nebraska wants to. So
yeah, we can get right into that. Nebraska, Wisconsin game, probably the biggest deal. Graham Mertz went off in his first game against Illinois, was almost perfect, kind of had a similar stat line to Justin Fields, except for having more passing touchdowns. He looked like the real deal, and it looked like it was almost set it and forget it. Wisconsin would be in the Big Ten championship game against us at the end of the year. Mm-hmm. But that kind of all got turned on its head after Graham Mertz tested positive, as well as their backup quarterback. He also tested positive, and I believe it was 9 other guys tested positive.
Wow.
Shutting down their entire facility. You know, Graham Mertz was already technically the second string quarterback after Jack Cohen was injured for the whole season. Right. And then their third string gets tested positive. So now they're left with their fourth string quarterback for 3 weeks. That's a big worry for them. Luckily they will be out for this week and they won't have to, he technically will only be missing 2 games now, but that's still a big deal. You know, there's no flexibility as we talked about. That was a big concern that we were having. If they would have gone with the original schedule they had in September, that would have left them a lot of flexibility in the schedule, but they decided to delay it and they effed up big time.
Yeah. And you said good thing they don't play this week, but at the same time, it's a loss. It's not technically a loss, but it's I don't know the technical term for it. What do they call it? But pretty much the game never happened and it never will happen. And they just will never have a chance to play it. It just doesn't exist. Which it might not help and that might not hurt them getting to the Big Ten championship, but you know, those guys are out for 3 weeks. So 9 players plus the 2 quarterbacks are out for 3 weeks minimum. And if more guys test next week or continue to test, they might not play a game for 3 weeks. I mean, it really could screw their season up.
Mm-hmm. And they almost lucked out in this situation because Nebraska looked pretty good against us. And if you take Graham Mertz out of that game and you're left with their 4th string quarterback, it's very possible they would have lost to Nebraska in that game.
Oh, for sure.
I honestly probably would have predicted that had to happen. But now they're left with, I think it was Indiana they play the next game. And then week 3, maybe. Sorry, I don't have it in front of me. I'm just trying to remember from memory. But the 3rd game that Graham Mertz would have missed, he would be playing Michigan. And that's a huge game for them. That was going to be a really good game between those 2 teams, especially because Michigan, we can get into that a little bit. They looked pretty good, honestly, too. They looked a lot better than they have been in the past. And that probably is going to be a pretty big game for the Big Ten. And now that's completely thrown out the door if Graham Mertz doesn't play.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, he won't. Sorry, not if, he won't.
Right. I don't know how far Jack Cohen is away from being healthy, but do you see it as a possibility?
He's out for the season.
He is. Okay, they said that.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think so. Yeah, that's what I read, yeah.
Wow, that's a huge blow. That sucks.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I know that Cardell Jones came in and played well as our 3rd string quarterback, but this is their 4th string guy that he's thrown one pass in his career with Wisconsin. It was a touchdown.
Nice.
But he really has no experience much at all. I don't think that there's much for them to be feeling happy with. You know, they could run the ball a lot, kind of put it in their defense to win them games. But when you're playing a team like Michigan, that's going to be tough.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry, I'm looking up the guys that tested positive. But
while you look into that, though, I'll go into Michigan.
For sure.
They looked really good. Joe Milton honestly looked a lot better than Shea Patterson has the past 2 years. This is the first quarterback that Jim Harbaugh recruited himself, I'm pretty sure. You know, Shea Patterson was a transfer. Spates was there before Harbaugh got there. So this is his first chance to show that he can, to prove himself as a coach, and it ended up working really well. I expected Minnesota-Michigan game to be actually really close, and Michigan controlled that game pretty much the entire game.
Right, and looking at the scoreboard, you could tell that their offense is different than it was last year.
Mm-hmm. It's a weird thing. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm looking up Shea Patterson's stats with Michigan because I thought I remembered this. So he started off super strong with Michigan, right? So through the first 6 weeks, Shea Patterson was at Michigan. This was his junior year. Or this was 2018. So 2 seasons ago, he had 13 touchdowns and 3 interceptions in his first 6 weeks. Right. And then he only ended the season with 22 touchdowns. So in the first 6 weeks, he had 13 touchdowns, and he only had 9 touchdowns the following 7 games. So what I'm trying to say is I think Josh Gad offenses are kind of quirky and like new and stuff, but I think defenses figure that stuff out very quickly. And as the season goes on, it gets harder and harder for the quarterbacks to perform. So it might be an overreaction for some people. As far as how well Milton is playing, but honestly, I think we have to see more before we crown this guy, the next great Michigan quarterback.
No, I agree. I mean, I think that he definitely played well, but like you said, it's only one game. There's a lot to go still. And their receivers, they don't have as well of a receiving group as they did last year. They lost Peoples-Jones, obviously, and then Nico Collins, I believe, opted out for the season. So they're 2 big guys they lost already. Running back wise, they looked better than last year running the ball, but it was just different. It looked like a lot more of that dynamic running offense in general, rather than the sad offense they've had the past few years, right? Where they kind of just win by defense. But that was a big deal. We'll see what happens. We'll finish up with the Big Ten real quick. Rutgers over Michigan State. That was massive. No one really expected Michigan State to do well this year. Besides just the name game, they're a big program. Maybe they get some big recruits and they'd play well. I did not expect them to lose Rutgers.
Yeah,
I did not expect them to lose to Rutgers.
No, new coach, terrible offense. Even with the new coach and terrible offense, I still expect them to beat Rutgers. Man, Rutgers, are you kidding me? Rutgers, and exactly. Rutgers looked low key great. I mean, they look like they came to play. They're not the same Rutgers team as before. Let me see here. The final score was. Do you have it on you? Sorry, I looked up Rutgers and Rutgers University.
I think it was like 38-24. And that was the first Big Ten win by Rutgers since 2017, which is kind of crazy. There was a lot of talk of why they were even in the Big Ten anymore, just because of how poorly they've been. But Schiano, man, he's back.
Yeah, the Schiano, man. It's the first time that Rutgers has gone 1-0 in the Big Ten. And honestly, is this the first time that Rutgers has had a winning record in the Big Ten? Since their inaugural season, I think they were pretty good, right?
I mean, it's probably likely because 2017 they haven't had a win in the Big Ten since 2017, so they've been winless every year. So yeah, probably.
Wow, but it was actually pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, Schiano, he pretty much like flipped the entire roster when he got there. He had transferred, I think, 2 transfers from OSU. One was Brendan White, former Rose Bowl defensive MVP for us, former safety. He didn't really play much last year or 2 years ago. And then
it was last year because he did well against Sam Darnold.
Yeah. He was, we tried to make him our monster back, monster linebacker. Did not work out well. He didn't really get any playing time, transferred to Rutgers. And obviously it's gone pretty well for him so far.
Right. I'm actually curious to see how Brendan White did.
Yeah.
Brendan.
Because I think that's a pretty big deal just because he's was a big guy for us.
Was he eligible?
For the game?
Yeah, was he eligible to play this year?
I'm pretty sure because I don't think I think he transferred like earlier on in the season. I don't think it was that recently. That's why I almost thought it was 2 years ago because I feel like he's been there for a little while now. But while you look that up real quick, Purdue over Iowa. I expected Iowa to be a better team this year, kind of competing for that West championship. But it kind of just adds to the craziness. Now Wisconsin losing Graham Mertz, Minnesota already losing a game, Iowa losing a game. Kind of interesting to see who – maybe Wisconsin, this is the year to have because they probably still have a chance of doing pretty well with how poor the West is right now. But Minnesota, they're still a good team, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that was I still have faith in Minnesota for sure.
Mm-hmm. Did you see anything about? Did you find about Brandon White though?
I couldn't see anything about him playing. He's a senior.
Maybe he wasn't eligible yet.
5 tackles. He had 5 tackles, and an interception and a fumble.
Okay, so he did have a good game. Dang.
Yeah, a fumble recovery, interception,
good for him.
5 tackles. Yeah, definitely good for him. 13-yard taking it back 13 yards. I would actually be interested in seeing the highlights from that, but that's good for him. He's still listed on a bunch of stuff as an Ohio State player.
He's probably still known better as an OSU player. So
yeah, he only had 19 tackles total last year with the Buckeyes, so he's already 26% of the way to his total tackle percentage last year.
Yeah, good for him.
Yeah, seriously.
I want him to do well. Yeah, so. But I want to save the Penn State Indiana game for last. Probably have more to say about that. So we'll go real quick. Oklahoma State broke out as the leaders in the Big 12, beating Iowa State 24-21. That's probably going to be a big deal for the rest of the season. Obviously, Oklahoma State plays Oklahoma still. That will probably – but if Oklahoma beats them, Oklahoma already has 2 losses, might knock out Big 12 completely from the CFP. And then Cincinnati, legit top 10 team, beating SMU 42-13. What are your thoughts on both those teams as possible CFP teams?
Truly, I don't see either as being a CFP team, to be honest.
Yeah.
Oklahoma State, that's great. I mean, I think we said that Iowa State game was going to be a really tough match for them last week, and Iowa State does always like to play spoiler. But it's just hard for me to believe that Oklahoma State is a CFP team, especially when CFP is only 4 teams. Cincinnati, I'm not buying it. And I that is awesome. They beat SMU 42-13, but I'm just having a really hard time buying in on that one.
I think they're going to end up being kind of like a UCF this year. I think that they're good. They can probably win in a pretty good bowl game, like a New Year's Six bowl game. They could probably win. But I don't think they compete. Like OSU beat Cincinnati 42-0, and I probably think that it would be pretty similar if we played them again this year.
Yeah, I have no doubt about that. And just Cincinnati sports, like Cleveland sports, we're perpetually heartbroken. And I would say Cincinnati sports are kind of the same way. Like UC basketball gets into the top 5 every year and loses. They haven't won a national championship since the 90s. And their basketball team's always good, so they get into the top 10, top 5, they lose. I just think that they're susceptible to a slip up, one of these games, it's just not going to, they're going to lose in close fashion or something like that. And they're just obviously just going to be totally thrown out of the conversation after that.
Yeah. All right. And then, Jalen Waddle, probably one of the best football players in college football right now. Wide receiver for Alabama. Out for the entire year. Really sad to see that, even though I'm obviously not an Alabama fan. He was really exciting to watch, and I enjoyed watching him. He'll be a top pick in the draft, no doubt about that. But it was tough to see him out for the year now.
Even with a broken ankle.
Yeah, exactly. Did you see Nick Saban's comment, though? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it was pretty pretty controversial in my opinion. He said, I don't know if anybody's seen the play where Jalen Waddle got hurt. Yeah, it was a kickoff play, and he was returning the kick. He took up the kick out of the end zone, and he got rolled up on and broke his ankle. And Nick Saban said, it sucks that he's hurt. He's a great player, but you shouldn't be taking out kicks from that deep in the end zone. I was like, are you
not
kidding
the time
me?
or place to be saying that?
Not the time or place. read the room, man. Read the room. That was hilarious to me.
Like this dude's literally in a hospital bed, probably getting ready for surgery or something. And I thought that I heard this too. And Yeah, and it was like the perfect reaction to it was that this Nick Saban, obviously not a guy that shows emotions at all, but this dude was basically crying when Tua was out when he found out Tua was out for the season, and Jalen Waddle, his best player, gets out, and he's like, he did. It was his own fault.
Right. He's pissed. He's like, I told him not to take these kicks out. He's like, yeah, you shouldn't be taking out kicks that deep. Then he's like, but he's a great player, so he thought he could make a play or something like that. You could tell in his head, he's like, shouldn't have said that.
He's like, we leave the judgment up to the players when they're that good, but still, I'm right, you're wrong.
Right. Very funny.
It was definitely one of those like I told you so moments.
Right. They definitely had that conversation before.
Oh yeah, he probably. I would not doubt that. And then, so then the last bit, probably the biggest game of the week, and it kind of goes to preview to Penn State Indiana game. That was one of the best games I've seen in a while. I was very upset that I didn't get to watch much of it just because I was at work. But whenever I got the chance to watch, it was insane. And I watched the last bit, the fourth quarter and overtime. I watched most of it. Probably one of the craziest plays I've ever seen. Penix Jr. stretches out for the 2-point conversion, doesn't touch the ground at all with his knee or any elbow.
Right.
He gets the ball to the pylon, but the bottom of the ball touches the ground. Some say before it crosses the plane. Some say after it touches the plane. There's really no right answer, and that's like my biggest takeaway is that no matter what, you weren't going to make the right call. Mm-hmm. So you might as well keep what you called on the field. And I thought that's probably the right thing to do. Agreed. I don't know. Did you think it was a touchdown?
Truly, I think I might have lost you there for a second, but I think that
you're good. Keep going.
Oh, sorry. My initial reaction watching it in live form, touchdown, right? Watching it in review, still touchdown. It took me. I went on YouTube, took it down to the lowest possible speed, 0.25 of the original speed, and only when you take it that slow can you see that it probably touches the ground before it touches the pylon. But it is so bang bang that I agree. You go with what's on the field. It's so hard to overturn. It's in the words of like PFT, it's like Schrodinger's touchdown. Is it in? Is it not in?
Yeah.
It's almost too hard to tell. And both possibilities are so, both scenarios are so equally possible that I'm glad they went with what they did. Obviously, I'm glad to see Penn State lose, but it was crazy. That's probably one of the most controversial calls in a long time. It's almost like the Dez catch or the Dez non-catch or whatever, or the Hail Mary or anything like that. I think that'll go down in history as one of those calls.
Mm-hmm. I think it was one of those calls too, where it was like, even with some of those other ones, it's like majority of the people felt one way. It wasn't like it was a missed call or like there was a wrong call. In that situation, it was, this is just impossible to call, so we see the argument for both sides. Like, I'm not going to take a stand and say what it is really. It was a touchdown, but it was also, 2-point conversion. It was a 2-point conversion, but it also wasn't, it literally was both at the same time.
Right.
But
it literally was both.
I feel like once you get into the nitty gritty of that stuff, you kind of just have to go with what your first thought is. And I think everyone would agree that first thought is that's a 2-point conversion. That's a good.
Right. And I completely agree with you. I mean, if we're going to examine every call down to the microscopic level, there's no need for referees anyway. So go with the human error or go with the human, rely on a human in that situation. Still an impossible call either way. And if it got overturned, it would have just been equally as controversial, so you're not saving anything by keeping it the same way. But definitely a good game, a great game. I mean, Indiana looked terrible, then they looked great, and it was
it was a shootout. Even though it was only 39-38, it felt like a shootout, honestly, just because there was so many back-to-back touchdowns in the end of the game.
Mm-hmm. Gutsy call to go for two as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was gutsy, but because it's Indiana and they can never beat top 10 teams, I felt like it was the right call still, especially since Penn State was starting to figure it out. They probably were going to lose if they didn't do that. So I really did like the call. But last thing I'll say about that play, we can go more into the game itself when we preview the OSU game against them, was just that my jaw dropped seeing that play. And I almost feel like the call is overshadowing the play itself. You know, like that feat of him diving like that, I've never seen something like that. You know, like he literally dove almost, it felt like 10 yards.
Right.
And just floated across to make it to the goal line.
Crazy body control. I mean, you see that all the time, guys like dive and stuff, but you're right. How did his arm not to touch the ground? How did his legs not touch the ground? You know, I feel like the only person that does that is like Zeke. If you watch Zeke play, he's the only person that has like that kind of body control. But yeah, it's crazy. Got out of the pocket going opposite of his dominant hand. So if you think about it, I mean, I'm sure some people are like college quarterbacks are much more ambidextrous than me or you are. But if you think about it, if he's rolling out to his right, then he would have to have the ball in his left hand to make that play, you know? And who knows that his grip is on like his left hand, blah, blah, blah. But the fact that he rolled out to the left, his dominant hand got out to stretch and hit the pylon there. It's just crazy. Like if you think about all the stuff that goes into it.
I think there's going to be posters of that play around Indiana for a while.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome play, awesome game.
So
that quarterback's pretty good too.
He is. I was really confused why Peyton Ramsey transferred, and I thought that Indiana was going to take a step back because Peyton Ramsey was a pretty solid quarterback, in my opinion. And he transferred to Northwestern, and I was kind of surprised by that. But apparently, Penix was the reason. They knew he was coming, and they probably told him, "Hey, you didn't pick it up enough in this last year. I know you were 9-3, but we're ready to take it to the next level. We want Penix," and he proved himself right there. And then.
And
I think
also Peyton Ramsey had a great game too, by the way. Not great, but he had a pretty good game.
Yeah, Northwestern's not a team that was on my radar. Who'd they play and did they win?
They did win. Hold on, let me pull it up again. I just had it up. But because I was confused. I didn't even realize Peyton Ramsey transferred until I was watching the highlights for the Northwestern game. And I was like, Peyton Ramsey?
Yeah, I only realized just because I was going through like the previews and I happened to see that, and I was really surprised by it.
Right, they played Maryland, beat them 43-3.
Okay. Oh yeah, that's right. Because Tua's brother, bad performance from Maryland.
Bad.
He's still young, he's still early, but he's pretty much locked in. Not Tua.
Pretty much locked in. Not Tua. Yeah. Great.
All right, so we've gone through this past week. We'll go into week 9 real quick. I know we've talked a lot about this stuff, but this was honestly a really, really exciting week. It was a great welcome back to the Big Ten. Oh, you're good.
Sorry. Go ahead.
But we have 3 big games that we'll go back and forth. Just who you're gonna like headlines. Michigan State. You think they scored all against Michigan?
Is Rocky Lombardi their quarterback?
Pretty positive, yeah.
Yeah, I'm saying you stick with them.
Yeah, because I think he was starting against Rutgers. I don't think they really have much else to go with.
Right. I'm just, as a coach, you go with Rocky Lombardi. You've seen that guy for 3 years now, and you still
I don't know how you do.
Right.
Exactly.
You say score in general? Yes. A touchdown? No chance. Michigan State's offense is so bad. So bad.
It's really bad. Like normally this Michigan game would be a big headline, and I don't care one bit about that game.
No, and I probably
besides seeing that if Michigan's still good. Yeah. And then I'll give you one more, and then you can hit me with the last one.
Sure.
You think Cincinnati continues their big season against Memphis? Memphis has kind of had their number the past couple of years. I think they ruined Cincinnati's perfect season last year. Memphis is 3-1, but they're still a pretty solid team. How do you think Cincinnati does against them?
If I had to put money on it, I would say Cincinnati wins the game. But it's just in an effort to make their season that much more heartbreaking.
All right. I think that they're not as good. They did lose Antonio Gibson, who was pretty solid for them last year. They're not as the team that they were last year. So I do agree Cincinnati wins that game pretty well.
All right, I got one for you. Is Texas back, and do they upset Oklahoma State this week?
I have trouble saying yes, just because Oklahoma State's defense has been pretty solid this year, but at the same time, I don't feel like they've really played much. So I think Texas actually does upset them. I think Texas plays better as an upset team rather than step up in the big games.
Sure.
When they're favored. So I think Sam Ehlinger's still pretty legit. I'm taking Texas in that game.
All right, so very fair. I don't know if I'm sold on Sam Ehlinger. I would say no. I don't think he's that good, but I don't know.
I think he's a really solid college quarterback, but I think he doesn't have a future in the NFL.
There you go. I know Baker doesn't like him very much.
He doesn't like anyone in Texas, though. Horns down.
Horns
All
down.
Right, now we'll get into what everyone has been waiting for, the big Penn State game. We started talking about Penn State. Obviously, as we talked about, Penn State lost. This is going into it as an 0-1 team. First half, they looked absolutely terrible, Penn State did against Indiana. I think we both would agree Indiana's a pretty solid team. It's not like they're Rutgers that beat them. This wasn't Appalachian State upsetting Michigan that one year. This is not like it was completely blown away that this happened, but it still was a big deal. I think a lot of fans that I've talked to said that they were kind of cheering for Penn State to win just to help out our season. But at the end of that game, it was a toss-up. Even if they won that game, it still was a stain on their season by keeping it so close against Indiana. So I think Penn State's still a good team. I'm not classifying them as a bad team yet. Would you agree?
Yes, I would agree that Penn State is a good team. I would find it hard to believe that they fall off that much in 1 year, you know?
Yeah. I mean, they literally did everything wrong that they possibly could, and they still pretty much, like some would say, won that game because some would say that was not a completed 2-point conversion.
Right. They're one historically difficult call away from being 1-0.
Mm-hmm. And they more than doubled Indiana's yards. So the fact that they even lost that game is kind of crazy. Their offense was slow in the first half. They picked it up, obviously. Clifford looked a lot better, and tight end Pat Freiermuth, I never can say his last name.
Baby Gronk.
Definitely looked at. Yeah, he's definitely the big guy going into the draft. Was one of the best players to talk about going into the Big Ten season. He was actually one of the people that Justin Fields talked to before when the season was canceled. He talked to him about ways that they could work together to get the season to happen. I thought that was pretty interesting. I think he said he talked to him and Rashad Bateman. Those three worked together to get the season going. So that was cool. But I think that people are going to take them too lately. And they haven't been started 0-2 since 2002. Like I said, they played well. Their defense actually wasn't as bad, in my opinion, as it looked. Yes, they gave up 38 points, but that was also because they played in overtime. They contained them in yard-wise. You know, they only allowed 41 rushing yards. They have a pretty solid defensive end and safety that stand out. They are missing Micah Parsons on defense, which is a big loss for them. But I think that we continue to struggle on the running game, just because it's only the second game of the season. They played really well against the rush. I think we're going to probably rely on the offense a lot. Sorry, I'm babbling.
No, you're good.
The floor is yours.
No, you're good. I would say that I'm not completely sold on Sean Clifford. I think he's definitely not as good as he looked, even though he didn't look great. I truly think that he's very, very average. 238 yards, 3 touchdowns, but the 2 interceptions is what really kills me, you know. He did have 119 rushing yards, which is really impressive, but I don't know. I mean, I'm not completely sold. I don't even know. I didn't watch the game live. I watched it just the plays. I watched all the plays, like a condensed version of the game. Devin Ford, their running back. What did you think about him?
Yeah, I think he's going into the season. He was their third string, I believe. So for what they were expecting from him, I thought he played better than what they were just like hoping to get out of him. But I think that that's still a really big note to take about this game, just because Penn State, they're known for their top running backs, Miles Sanders, Saquon Barkley, right. And they don't really have that this year just because of those injuries. So I think that's going to – I think he can probably play pretty well against us, but we contain Nebraska pretty well in the running game. I think we continue to do that against them. I think if they still had Trace McSorley, I'd be a lot more concerned about this game just because of how well McCaffrey and AJ Martinez ran against us. Clifford does not pose any threat to me running the ball.
119 rushing yards.
Yeah, but I think it was partially just because of the fact that it was game script, he just had those opened up. But I mean, I guess I didn't watch 100% of the game. What do you think about him as a runner? You didn't watch it live, but you watched more plays than I did.
Yeah. So I mean, honestly, my first reaction isn't Sean Clifford's a runner, but this is what I have to say about it. Penn State historically, at least the last few years, great running backs relied heavily on their running game. And then Trace McSorley actually has been a surprisingly good quarterback all around for them. I mean, they were dangerous. They were really dangerous. Now it doesn't seem like they have much of a running game, and they have no receivers. They're really struggling to pick up receivers. Their two best receivers left. So that means that the entire offense falls on Sean Clifford's arm. And I just don't see him being able to carry the offense in the way, he's 6.8 average yards per completion for Sean Clifford. I mean, that's definitely not something that gives me much confidence in that team or in him to be able to lead this team. I don't think Indiana's definitely not a pushover, but they're definitely not like really a good program either, as far as powerhouse. So I don't know. I mean, I don't really think. I mean, maybe I'm being a little bit too confident, but I feel actually really confident going into this game.
Yeah, I mean, as I talk about it more, I think that I keep going back and forth, because at the end of the day, this is still Penn State. James Franklin's a good coach. He doesn't make really good decisions when it comes down to the end of the games. Probably should have made sure this running back wasn't going to score at the end of the game. Probably shouldn't have ran on fourth down against us with Chase Young in the game. But so he's made some bad decisions in his past, but he's still a good coach. But when I do think about it, their defense, they have Wade, pretty good safety, and they have Tarky, I think his name, Tony, Shakatoni. Yeah, Shakatoni. Sorry, I want to make sure I had that right. Both pretty solid defensive players, but even that, I don't like their defense doesn't worry me too much. And I'm not saying this as just because I think OSU is like godly necessarily. It's just that who's better offense? OSU. Who's better defense? OSU. And in those closer games that we used to play against them the past few years, there was more of a easy, closer matchup. And I don't think that this matchup is as good as it has been in the past. And that's why I honestly think that 12-point favorite that they have us at actually isn't so bad.
Yeah, and that is a lot for an Penn State game away on the road, white out in Pennsylvania, but
no white out.
Yeah, but no white out, right? No fans. I don't know. I mean, again, it's also their first game of the year too, so it's kind of hard to judge them. Like we were saying the same thing about Ohio State players. I mean, we have to apply the same standards to them as well, it being the first game. So, I don't know. I'm feeling confident though.
I do think, I'm feeling confident, but I think that we would both agree to remind all OSU fans that don't expect this to be the team that lost to Indiana. Expect this to be a solid team, but probably not a top 10 team in the country.
Right. Yeah, but man, I'm just having a hard time. And maybe I'm jinxing us so bad right now, but I am just having a hard time. Like Who's all right? Offense is better, defense is better. Goes down to special teams and coaching. Who's better coach?
Yeah. I'd say Ryan Day.
Right.
In game, especially.
Right.
And then you look at special teams. Their kicker missed 3 field goals last week.
And we have one of the best punters and kicker duos in the country. Like it's just every phase of the game. I just feel like we're better at. And like I said, and then it comes down to coaching, and Ryan Day's top 4 coach in the CFP. So
yeah.
Or CFP.
Yeah, I think the closest matchups you could say is the coaching and the defense. But I still think we have a better defense, and especially in those big games like this. And I still think Ryan Day's the better in-game coach, which is what really matters.
I think James Franklin's a good rah-rah guy. He really turned the program around, but
he's a program guy.
Program guy, right? But he's just not a great in-game coach. And you're completely right. I mean, I can't stop thinking about 4th down. They run a draw right to an unblocked Chase Young to lose the game, and I think that stench will kind of always stick with them. But I don't know. I'm really excited. I'm super excited for a night game. Yeah.
I mean, you look just back at the history, you got the 3-game win streak that we're on right now, 28-17 last year, 27-26, and then 39-38. Those 2 games were phenomenal games.
Right.
Both of those came from behind not last year, but the years before that, both came from behind games. Right. I don't feel like that's going to be the same case this year, as we both agree. But yeah, I'm super excited for the night game, 7:30 p.m. on ABC on Halloween. So I'm sure they'll be talking up Halloween all night.
Right.
I'm super excited for it. Planning on getting together with some of my old college roommates for that game. So I'm excited to bring back that game aspect that I used to have for it. So.
Right. It is Halloween though, so you never know. Some spooky things might happen.
You're right. Hopefully not. I'm super excited for that aspect of things. Everyone, all eyes on OSU. I think we make a statement. I really do.
Yep. And that's why going into my score prediction, I think that Ryan Day is going to kind of run it up. He has to.
Mm-hmm.
The whole country's going to be watching. They have to show a reason why Ohio State, with having been dealt the cards that they have, need to, why do they deserve to be considered in the CFP? We're only playing so many games. The SEC is playing so many more. The SEC is quote unquote the better conference, the most dominant. And I have no doubt that they'll have 2 submissions in the CFP, but he needs to make a statement. And that's why I'm predicting a 50 burger. No, I'm just kidding. 40 burger though.
Yeah. My score prediction. What is your actual score prediction?
Yeah. So do you have the over-under for me?
Yeah, the over-under is 63.5, and we are 12-point favorites.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's
42. Wow. 63.5. I just don't trust Penn State's offense to carry the other 20 or so points that needs to hit the over, 42-7.
Okay. So my biggest thing with it is that Nebraska probably still worse offense than Penn State has, and they scored 17 points on us. Yes, those all came pretty early in the game.
Right.
Kind of like fluke touchdowns
Scripted.
That they just had some big plays. Scripted, exactly. But last week, my score prediction, I had 52-17. I was 1 point off. Very disappointing.
Very good prediction.
So we'll see how this does this week. I'm going 45-24.
Okay, so you're thinking more points. So you're hitting the over on that?
I am.
Yeah, 69. Yeah, maybe I'll switch.
And I say I take OSU as 12-point favorites.
Okay. Yeah. Oh yeah. Easily. Oh my God. Yeah. I'll go 42. I was gonna say 42-10, but I have a feeling that if they're in a situation where they could kick a field goal, they're not going to because they don't trust their kicker, and they might go for it. So I'll go 42-14. That's my final answer.
All right. I think that the fact that their kicker isn't good is going to be actually a big note. Is if we let them in the red zone, fine. Don't let up the touchdown though. Make them have to take the field goal, and I think that kills them.
Or go for it, 4-down territory for them.
Exactly.
Every time they're in the red zone. You know who always does that is the Cardinals go for it in the 4th down in the red zone all the time. Cruz Zane Gonzalez's fantasy.
His fantasy, yeah.
But
and I'll add one more bold prediction there. I'll just say that I think Sermon leads our backfield, and I think our running game improves from last week.
Yeah, I would agree with the approving thing. I think Steel Chambers gets more looks.
Yeah, I think that's probably true too. I think they try to prevent Justin Fields from running so much this week. And then season-wise, I'll add in there just for fun. My original prediction was that 2 Big Ten teams would make the playoff, and Penn State kind of ruined that for me.
Yeah.
And Wisconsin, Graham Mertz getting the positive.
Not looking good.
Getting the cocoa, not looking good. So I'm sticking with it, though. I think Georgia loses to Alabama. I think Georgia loses to Alabama again, which kills them. And Michigan loses to us, but they make the playoff.
Wow. Okay. Michigan. I was thinking I was going to say, are you going to put Rutgers in there as your forward?
This might be the boldest prediction I've ever made.
Rutgers and Ohio State. No, Michigan, we'll see. I'm not sold on Michigan either. I'm really not. They played, I don't know. Like I said, with
Minnesota's definitely a poorer defense than last year.
Right. They lost their best player, which I guess we did too, but whatever. I don't know. We'll see. We will definitely see.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just 2 Big Ten teams.
Hey, you don't have to agree with me. It's okay.
I know. I don't. I want to make that clear. I do not agree with you. But
I just want 2 Big Ten teams so bad, even if it has to be Michigan.
Yeah, and so Michigan can get embarrassed again. Yeah. No, because Harbaugh would probably get fired if they make it to the CFP and lose. So we want him to not make it, but be really close so he can keep his job.
Okay, I like that.
But I think that's all I have for this week.
Yeah, I think that we had as much longer than we expected, but there was a lot to talk about, especially being the first week of the Big Ten back. So
right.
We'll have probably a lot to say about the Penn State game next week. We're super excited, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, night game, can't get better than that. So you will not be at work, you said?
I will not be, luckily.
Nice. Yep. Get a few beers and enjoy the game. I'm really excited.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too, definitely. The night game. And on a quick note, Rutgers also got pushed to a night game.
Oh, they're already bumping them up to primetime games.
I'm pretty sure Ohio State Rutgers got pushed back. Did you read that too or no?
I thought I saw something about that now that you say it, but I don't remember.
Yes, they got pushed to a primetime kickoff spot. 7:30 p.m.
Okay.
There you go. So we have another night game this year for sure.
I'll have to have 2 screens up just so I can watch Rutgers.
I'm saying when Ohio State plays Rutgers.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So November 27th or something. I think Of
course, now that we're not there and we don't, we can't. Now that we're not on campus and we can't go to games, we have 2 night games. Of course, after having 0 last year.
Yeah, you never know with the vaccine now. I'm just kidding. We probably won't even be in the stadium next year either, which sucks, but whatever.
It does.
Besides the point.
Kevin Warren.
All right. Well, that's all I have.
Happy Halloween and go Bucks.
Throws it.
Go Bucks.
Incomplete. Smith in Jigba, the intended receiver.
It's a 5-star player. And you look as he's trying to get that control.
He may have gotten that foot in.
Goodness. That looks like a catch and a touchdown.
They ruled it incomplete, but that was clearly a touchdown.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it.
The receiver's right foot was down in the end zone with possession of the ball. It is reversed to a touchdown.
Wow. Man, I tell you what, man. This guy can play.